Gold and Black Live. Stacy joins us, as well as Lou Somogyi. Lou, are you there?
Yeah, right here.
Well, I'm glad to have you on, and Lou from Blue and Gold Illustrated, Fighting Irish, longtime Fighting Irish publication. Knows more about Notre Dame football than I think just about anybody on this good earth. And Lou, you've seen the Irish play in weeks 1 and 2. From a Purdue perspective, it's a pretty daunting task. But have you been as impressed as what seems like the rest of the world with the way Notre Dame has played against Rice and against Michigan?
Yeah, it's been very encouraging. There's a hunger, it seems, in this team because there's a very good combination of some seasoned veterans, but a lot of youth too. There have been as many as 8 players on defense who have been in the rotation, 5 of them quite regularly or so, or kind of that number. A lot of position changes. Jalen Smith, the All-American candidate at outside linebacker last year, moved to the inside. Matthias Farley moved from safety to a nickel role, which is pretty extensive in the details that go into that position. You lost a lot of marquee players like Stephon Tuitt and Lewis Nix along the defensive line. And, you had basically about 6 new starters along the front 7 there, other than Smith, and then maybe Sheldon Day, who was injured last year and sometimes wasn't able to play as much as they anticipated. So I think they came into this season with a hunger and motivation to demonstrate that they can still be a very, very good defense under new coordinator Brian Van Gorder, and he's put them in a position to succeed and to be able to shut out Michigan, which is a first in 30 years. I think really reinforces and validates to them that they can be very successful. And then offensively, just adding Everett Golson to that quarterback mix, being able to run Brian Kelly's spread scheme, that just the offense then becomes kind of what you expected. You last few years, or last year especially, you watch all these teams with the Jameis Winstons and the Taj Boyds and Braxton Millers, Marcus Mariota's putting up these 40, 50-point type outings, and now you look at Notre Dame's offense and say, you know what? They're capable of doing that too. They got the guy at the throttle now who can help them because they're fine at all the skill positions, veteran line and everything, but the missing link was just that dynamic quarterback figure who can beat you with his legs as well as with his arm.
Just to go back to the defense for a little bit, because they are so young and because it is a new defense, are you a little surprised with the kind of production that it's been able to have the first 2 weeks, and how complicated is that really when you have a guy, who has an extensive NFL background coming in there?
Well, yeah, I've been a little bit surprised there. To shut out Michigan, I mean, especially after giving up 41 points to them last year, with a defense that was on paper considered much more talented, and they didn't even allow them into the red zone. I think their deepest penetration was like the 22-yard line of Notre Dame. So to be that consistent over 4 quarters, yes. When Brian Kelly brought in Brian Van Gorder, and they worked together, a quarter century ago at Grand Valley State, he had talked about Brian being able to take the defense to a higher level. The last 4 years under Brian Kelly and then former coordinator Bob Diaco, who's now the head coach at Connecticut, there have been only 8 other teams that had a better scoring defense average than Notre Dame. So they have been performing well, and they got some stability. With Brian Van Gorder, it's kind of elevating to a little bit higher level is what the goal was. Having worked in the SEC at Georgia and Auburn, having worked in the NFL, including against Rex Ryan, one of the really great defensive minds in the game. It's just I think we were a little surprised at how fast they've been able to pick up everything. Now, with that said, It's like Brian Kelly pointed out. They did have 34 mental errors against Michigan. They were able to compensate for it with the athleticism and speed that they have on the defense, but there's still room for improvement, and I think that's the most encouraging part, and which feeds into the hunger aspect of it, is that they know they can be good, and there's still room for improvement.
You've studied, like I said, the history of Notre Dame football, and there have been, right now it looks pretty bleak for Purdue. Purdue's a 4-touchdown underdog. We've seen games over the years where that's been the case with Purdue, and they found a way to either make it a very competitive game or get the job done. And there have been some close games here of late, including last year when it wasn't expected to be. What are some of your games that you remember the most that shocked you in your years of watching Notre Dame and Purdue play that were some of your biggest surprises?
Oh, it's kind of funny you mentioned that 4-touchdown underdog business. I had a little feature on our website this week, just a perspective type thing, that the first thing I pointed out was the 79 points that Notre Dame has scored in the first 2 games were their best start in the first 2 games since Ara Parseghian's last season in 1974, when they scored 80.
Yeah.
That year they started off with 31-7 and 49-3 wins, and this year they start off with 48-17 and 31-0 wins. Very, very similar. Well, guess what? The third game that year was Purdue, which was 0-1-1 coming in, including they had a tie against the MAC team, Miami, Ohio. And now Purdue's coming off a loss to a MAC team at home. And Notre Dame was installed as, it was anywhere from a 28 to 34 point favorite. They were the defending national champs, etc. And so I'm thinking 28-point favorite then, and now it's 28.5-point favorite then. So it was kind of just fun looking at it. I'm hoping and anticipating it's not going to be a repeat of history, but that's the kind of craziness that occurs in this Purdue series. Purdue ended up winning that game 31-20, and I was sitting in the south end zone, a 12-year-old, or in the north end zone, I'm sorry, when they still had seats there. Purdue scored 21 points in the first 8 minutes, 2 of them off Notre Dame turnovers. And it was just hard to fathom how quickly it changed. And last year when Notre Dame fell behind in the first 5 minutes at home to Oklahoma 14-0, everyone was screaming, when has Notre Dame ever been behind like this so quickly in a game? And so just go back to 74 Purdue. It was 21-0 after 8 minutes.
Lou, just going back to Notre Dame's offense a little bit, Amir Carlisle is kind of an interesting story, obviously. When he has ties to Purdue, certainly with Dwayne Carlisle being the strength and conditioning coach here. But last season against Purdue was not a good game for Amir. And now, is he coming in with more confidence? It's a position switch. How has the transition to receiver gone for him? And what do you see that he can do production-wise now that he's maybe more familiar with that spot?
Yeah, based on the first 2 games, I right now, he'd be one of my front runners for most improved player. Just as playing with such confidence. I think separation skills as a receiver, they work so much on that with all the receivers, being able to release off the line, because there's really a lot of speed at the position there with Will Fuller and Chris Brown and Amir Carlisle, and so they're not the biggest guys, so the point of emphasis with all of them was being able to get off the line of scrimmage, release quickly, because a lot of teams would be playing press coverage, and that's what Michigan did. They really shut off the run, limited them to 54 yards, but there was a price to pay for that, which was single coverage on the outside. And Carlisle especially was just outstanding with a couple of touchdowns, but with those slants, the skinny posts, quick screens, when he gets the ball in space, he is an explosive player. He can do a lot of damage. Didn't really find his niche last year, and that late fumble against Purdue, from there on it kind of really went downhill, but I think the most pleasant surprise was just how good his hands have been, because Golson can really throw some lasers, but he's done a great job catching the ball with his hands, releasing off the line, running his routes with correctly, and then once he gets it in space, here's a former running back. You give him a little room, he knows what to do with it. So he's really become a very effective and dangerous weapon through these first 2 weeks, and I hope he's able to continue that.
Lou, we got time for one more question, and of course, a lot of talk here about the series coming to an end, or at least hiatus for 6 years, until September 19th, 2020, I think it is, when Purdue and Notre Dame face each other again. You know, this is the Notre Dame's second longest running series with, I think it's tied with USC, and then Navy being the longest. Is there a way to put the Purdue Notre Dame series in a box, and what has it meant to Notre Dame over the years, and how do you feel about the fact that it's no longer going to be a year-to-year thing?
Yeah, I mean, things change. That's the only guarantee in life, is change is going to come. And I think it's encouraging in a sense that you do see that in the future they have, I think, tentatively 4 or 5 games scheduled, starting with that 2020 up to about 2025 or so. So it's not like a permanent separation or anything like that. I think maybe sometimes just taking a break isn't the worst thing, but one of the columns I had this week was there has not been a series in college football history that just has had greater storylines with quarterback matchups than these teams over the years. I mean, starting with Heisman winner Johnny Lujack with Bob DeMoss back in the late 40s. And, I mean, you go with Len Dawson and Ralph Guglielmi, who's in the Hall of Fame. You go with Bob Greasy and Terry Hanratty meeting, and Joe Theismann against Mike Phipps, Kerry Danielson against Tom Clements. These guys aren't broadcasting or coaching and so many other things, but Joe Montana and Mark Herman. Mark Herman's in the College Football Hall of Fame and Joe's in the Pro Hall of Fame, but they can't be vice versa. But some of the just incredible battles that these quarterbacks have changed. Even just the oddest stories, like in 2000, Drew Brees, against Gary Gotzi, a tight end.
Yeah.
The Notre Dame quarterback got injured, and you had to put in Gary Gotzi, who was a high school quarterback, but he moved back to tight end eventually, and who would have thought he'd have more completions in the game than Drew Brees, and it was a last-second Notre Dame victory. So there have been just so many amazing storylines in this series with quarterbacks, and you look at the Super Bowl history with quarterbacks of both teams. There hasn't been another rivalry in America that can match this one as far as just quality quarterback play and production.
Well, I think, and I got a chance to read that piece. You did a great job bringing that to the fore. I think for all of our perspectives, it'd be good to have an entertaining, interesting game for close to 60 minutes tomorrow. I'm not sure that's going to happen, but it will be another in a long line, the 69th consecutive Purdue-Notre Dame game. Louis, thanks so much for your time. Have a safe trip down if you're making your way to Indianapolis, and we'll look forward to talking to you again, hopefully before 2020, but I'm sure we will at some point in time. Thanks again,
All right.
Lou.
Thank you for having me.
All right, Stacy, you already gave your prediction on the site, or it's about to go up. I guess you'll just let people read it at the end,
or they could have listened to the Friday radio
That's
show,
true.
and I would have said it on there too.
Okay.
I had Notre Dame.
And I did as well. 42-16. What was your?
31-14 or 37-14, something like that.
Yeah, both of them under the spread, I guess you can say that part of it. It'll be interesting to see what we get to next week at this time when we're looking back at Notre Dame, Purdue, but obviously looking ahead to Purdue, Southern Illinois. Want to thank our sponsors, Hilton Garden Inn, State Farm agent Trent Johnson, and of course John Basham and Basham Rental, and Triple X for their support of our program, and to Kim and to Gordon and all the folks at WLFI Alley that made this happen. If you missed part of the show, Jim Everett was our guest in segment 2. Gordon will get it all put up on the website, and I'll link it to goldenblack.com as well. probably in about an hour or so, and that will be your chance to watch the replay of Gold and Black live. And also, don't forget Gold and Black Radio, download and drive tomorrow if you're making your way to Indianapolis. Again, have a great week, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week on Gold and Black Live.